Hey everyone, today we're taking a deep dive into the massive world of Brazilian foreign trade. We're going to use the latest data to unpack what this economic giant sells, what it buys, and who its biggest partners are. So let's get straight to the numbers. Okay, right off the bat, let's just talk about the sheer scale here. In February 2026 alone, Brazil exported a staggering $26.3 billion worth of goods. I mean, think about that. That's how much stuff Brazil sold to the rest of the world in just 1 month. It's a huge number, and it tells you immediately that we're talking about a major player on the world stage. But, of course, trade is always a two-way street, right? So during that same month, Brazil imported $22.1 billion worth of goods. This is all the stuff the country needed to buy from other nations to fuel its economy and, meet the needs of its people. So if you put those two numbers together, the exports and the imports, you get the total flow of trade. Some economists call it the trade current. For February, that number is a massive $48.4 billion. This really paints a picture of just how much commercial activity is happening. It's an incredibly busy and interconnected economy. And this brings us to a really crucial point, the trade balance. When you subtract the imports from the exports, you find out that Brazil had a trade surplus of $4.2 billion. What that means is the country sold more than it bought, which is usually a fantastic sign of economic health and competitiveness. But these big numbers are only one part of the story. To really understand Brazil's trade, we need to look at the who. So, which countries are its biggest partners? It's the big question, isn't it? I mean, with $26.3 billion of goods leaving the country every single month, where is it all headed? The answer, well, it reveals a whole lot about how global trade works today. And wow, this chart makes one thing incredibly clear: the total dominance of one single partner. China is by far the largest destination, buying more than a quarter of everything Brazil sells to the world. The United States comes in at a distant second, and then you've got neighbor Argentina. This heavy reliance on the Chinese market is really a defining feature of Brazil's entire trade profile. So, we know where the goods are going, but what are these goods exactly? Let's break down the products that make Brazil such an export powerhouse. This chart tells a powerful story in just a single glance. You can see that the vast majority of Brazil's exports come from just two main sectors: the extractive industry, so think mining, oil, that kind of thing, and agriculture. The manufacturing industry, while it's there, plays a much smaller role. This tells us that Brazil's real strength lies in its incredible natural resources. And here are the stars of the show. Crude oil is number one, followed very closely by soybeans and iron ore. Then you've got beef and sugar rounding out the top five. The takeaway here is crystal clear. Brazil is a fundamental supplier of the raw materials and the food that literally power and feed the world. All right, let's flip the coin. We've seen what Brazil sells. Now, what does a country of this size and complexity actually need to buy from other nations to keep its own engines running? And check this out. This slide shows the other side of the story. And the contrast with the export chart is, well, it's stark. When it comes to what Brazil buys, the picture is completely dominated by the manufacturing industry. So, in short, Brazil sells raw materials, but it buys finished, value-added goods. So let's look at the specifics. The top import is a fascinating one: platforms and vessels, which makes sense for its massive offshore oil industry. That's followed by processed fuel oils, then chemical fertilizers, which it needs to support that powerhouse agricultural sector we talked about. And then you have electronic components and medicines for its population. Each item here tells us a little something about the needs of Brazil's industries and its people. So we've looked at the exports, the imports, and the key partners. Now let's bring it all together and paint that final, clear picture of Brazil's role in the global economy. Honestly, if you remember just one thing from this whole breakdown, it should be this slide right here. On the left, you've got the top exports, raw commodities like oil, soy, and iron ore. And on the right, you have the top imports, complex manufactured goods like industrial platforms, fertilizers, and electronics. This is it. This is the core story of Brazil's trade. There's actually a name for this kind of profile: a commodity superpower. It's a term for a nation whose economic might is built on its vast natural resources. Brazil is one of the world's absolute prime examples of this, right up there with countries like Australia or Russia. And all of this leaves us with a final and really crucial question. Being a commodity superpower brings immense wealth, for sure, but it also can leave an economy vulnerable to the wild swings of global prices. So, what's the next chapter for Brazil? How does a country like this leverage its natural strength to build a more complex, a more resilient role in the global economy? That, right there, is the multi-billion-dollar question.